Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and in today's video I'm just going to be showing off some basic checkmates that everyone just needs to know. Some of them may just be very simple, like the one in front of me right now, but others may be more complicated, like the two bishops checkmate. I'm just going to be covering basic checkmates, so the knight and bishop checkmate I don't consider very basic or practical to even know, so I'm not going to be covering that. But I will be covering 6 different checkmating patterns that just you need to know. So the first one, it's pretty obvious, especially to seasoned veterans. This is just checkmate in 1. The king has no forward moves. So if you can get on this back rank, it is checkmate in 1. That's just checkmate. On to the next one, which is also fairly simple, but there's a trick to it, is the queen versus king checkmate. Now the simplest way to do it, if you have like enough time, is just keep knight opposition. Now what that means is if the queen was a knight, it would put the king in check. And once you're in knight opposition, you can just copy the king's move. So let's say the king goes here, you go also 1 square diagonally down. King goes here, you just follow it up 1 square. And again, just keeping that knight opposition, just keep doing that no matter where the king goes. Just try and get it to the edge of the board. And then once the king is on the edge of the board, this is where you want to be careful, because you don't want to stalemate the king. So let's say king h7 and you go up, king h8 and you keep doing it, is stalemate. So the way I remember it is once the king's on the edge of the board, keep the queen on these central intersections, I would call it. That's how you can make sure you won't stalemate the enemy king. It's just a very easy rule to remember. And once the king is only in these two squares, this is when you bring the king. So king up, king there, and just walk the king all the way over. I don't know why it's lagging right now, but that's okay. And once your king is here or here, I'm just going to make another move, just because. And once you're, okay, this is like lagging, it's a bit annoying, but you get the point. Once the king and queen are in this order, you can move the queen to this square, and it'll always be checkmate as long as the king is protecting this square. Just remember not to stalemate the king, because that's the most common mistake people make. Anyways, on to the next checkmate, the rook versus king checkmate. Now, this one may seem scary at first, but it's very simple. Basically, what you're going to try and do is keep the king in a box, let's say here, and as the king moves around, you just want to keep making that box smaller and smaller. So for my first move here, I would either play rook d1 or rook a5 to actually start the box. Here, I'm just going to keep it close to the king. So now the box is started. It's this box here, king here. Okay, now I just made the box like half size. If here, the king's in the center of the board, so just move it away for now. And once you're in this configuration right here, where your king can always protect the rook, you just want to keep making the box smaller and smaller. So if here, just cut off that file that the king just moved off of. If the king goes back, put your king in opposition to control these squares in front of it instead of the rook. And on the next move, for example, here, you want to cut off that with the rook instead of the king. So king back, just make a waiting move, because on the next move, you'll be able to take another file or rank. You get the point. You just keep making the box smaller and smaller. Here, yep. Just keep making it smaller. Once it gets on the back rank, it makes it easy. Obviously, they're probably not going to do that, but I'm trying to simplify it. So after they get on the back rank, this is when you want to Just move your king in front of it, take away another square, king over, here. Now this is where you actually want to move back, so when the king goes here, you can cut off another square with the rook. So king here, 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 here. Now this is where you want to be careful, because the king is on its last two squares. So once you reach this position, king here, you want to take control of these frontal squares with your king, just like there was 3 pawns here. Just make sure the king cannot move forward. And once you're in this position, the king's here, but you can't play checkmate 1. So what do? Well, you don't really care about this rank anymore, since your king is controlling the squares in front of the king. So the only job the rook is doing right now is cutting off the c file. Well, you can do that from anywhere on the c file. So just move it back 1 square as a waiting move, and once the king goes back, just checkmate. There you go. That's how you checkmate with the rook and king. On to my next one is 2 bishops versus king. Now the way I was taught how to do this is basically you just want to move everything in a unit. And this is kind of the same concept as rook versus king. You're just going to be boxing off the king and making its box smaller and smaller. So we're going to start with here. And just keep everything together. See, these 4 squares are now cut off. Now move your king, make sure that he's always stay in a unit, and just move square by squares, cutting off more and more squares. So here I would go, let's say here. Now let's see here, here. So king here. I'll just move this forward. King is forced back a rank. And just keep these a unit. Keep everything as a unit. So, I don't know, let's say king here. It's lagging a little bit. Yep. Get your king closer. Again, keeping everything as a unit. I'm cutting off the squares on the d file now. So king up. Let's see. I put king here. Squares for the king are just getting less and less. So, for example, can't go anywhere here, so it has to be forced back. Move your king, king opposition. Of course, this is probably not the move they would make, since this is easy for king opposition. Here, you're just cutting off more and more squares and trying to get on the king to the last file or rank on the board, so the edge. And once the king gets there, put king in opposition. And this means just cutting off the squares closest to your king. So king here. Now you want to cut off this square where it just came from, because this bishop is covering this square, so it can't move off the edge. So after here, here, you can move back, of course. So you give this check. And now the king's forced here. And you really want to be careful with stalemate with 2 bishop mate. So this square is cut off, so you don't need it anymore, but you want to keep opposition. So put your king opposite the other king. So these 2 squares are cut off, and this is cut off. So the king is on these last 2 squares. So bishop here, huge blunder, it'd be stalemate. So you actually just want to make a waiting move for the king to move back. And once the king is in opposition, you want to move the bishop opposite the colored corner first to give a check. And you want to make sure the other bishop is covering the square opposite of the corner. So in that case, I will now give this check. The king is forced to this square, and this will be checkmate. Your king is cutting off this square and this square, so the king is trapped in the corner and in check. There you go. Now I'm going to go back to relatively simple mates, since that one was quite earful. Here is the queen and rook ladder mate. And a ladder mate is just a general checkmating pattern. It's just very common. But I'm going to show you my take on it, since there are some ways to stalemate here, and there's a way to always avoid that. So the thing I like to do the most is put the queen queen here. I'm just cutting off right now. I'm not actually doing anything. I'm just setting up my pieces in a nice configuration. I'm going to put my rook so it's closer, one file closer to the king than the queen is. So you see, if we draw lateral lines, the queen is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the rook is 1, 2, 3 away. So now, I don't know, it doesn't really matter what the king does. Now you literally just want to step. Actually, I'm going to do it wrong since this pawn is actually annoying. So I'm just going to reconfigure my pieces, give a check, but it doesn't matter. And now from here, it's very simple. There's a reason it's called ladder checkmate, because it's like you're climbing a ladder. And if you have the piece of greater value behind the piece of lesser value when giving ladder mate, so queen behind the rook, you will never stalemate your opponent, ever. Unless, of course, there's like, it gets stuck between two pawns here, and I don't know, you cut it off here and block the square in front of it. Anyways, so yeah, after this, you just keep giving check, and the king will just be forced rank by rank to the last rank, and you'll be able to deliver mate very easily. It's one of the simplest mates in chess, and should be known by everyone. And for my last one, it's essentially the same thing, but it's two rooks, so they're equal value, so you can't really align them in a way where one is behind the other, and it matters. So here, you're going to have like the same concept from the rook and king mate. You want to first of all put it in a box. King's going to walk this way, check here. Now you can't give this check, so what do? Just move as far away as you can without putting it on the same file as your other rook, or rank if you're giving lateral mate. So then the king will go here, and you just want to cut off rank by rank or file by file, and eventually it'll be ladder checkmate. So that does it for today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow.